Right then, this is a quick road test video, and this is for a rare car indeed, a Honda Integra, and also it's a 2-litre DC5 model. This particular car is registered CU51ZXC, and mileage showing is 96,167 miles. The reason we do these videos is so basically anyone that's looking at this car online in an advert actually gets to see that very car in operation. We feel it's right that if people are willing to come and travel to us from distance, then they will get to see the car. It gives us an opportunity, very importantly, to feedback on any issues there may be on the car prior to people coming to see us. We know to our cost just how frustrating it can be to go and see a car, only to get there to find out when you finally get to drive it, it's got a fundamental issue which either would have stopped you going, or at least you could have made allowance for before going. A couple of things before I start the video, which I don't normally do. Firstly, an apology. The Integra, whilst it's a lovely car, doesn't have a sunroof and doesn't have headrests in a normal way, which basically means mounting the camera is very, very difficult to do. So I have to put it on the side window over there, which I know gives a really horrible kind of view and perspective of the car. So again, apology for that. And also, secondly, the reason for kind of the delay in doing the video actually, and it's all part and parcel of what we do. When we took the car as a part exchange, the car was lovely, drove beautifully. The only issue I had with it right from the outset was the actuation of the clutch. It would bite perfectly, there was no clutch slip, nothing like that, no judders. But when you release the clutch, especially in the lower gears, it kind of had quite a long motion as it engaged. And also the gear change, particularly at higher revs, was quite bulky, more so than should be the case. So we've gone to the expense of having a new clutch fitted to the car, and it's just transformed it. It's exactly what it should be, because I had one of these personally years ago, and it now drives exactly as that one did. The clutch is perfect, obviously, and the gear change absolutely sensational, which I'll come to in due course. So going through the car, first and foremost, engine starts absolutely instantly, settles to completely smooth, even idle, and I'll come more to the character of the engine later on in the video, but it pulls absolutely beautifully, it really does. Clutch of the car, not going to labour that one, obviously absolutely perfect because it's just been done. Gearbox, again I'll talk about more later in the video, but absolutely perfect as well, no issues at all, just feels tight as a drum. Steering of the car, again, just things I'm looking for, wear basically. I can't feel any wear in it. I drove the car for over 4 hours yesterday, a lot of it motorway driving, so at motorway speeds, no wobbles at all. It feels lovely and tight on the road. Again, same with the suspension of the car, it's firm, obviously. Feels a bit firmer than my last one did, I must admit, so maybe, I don't know with any certainty, it may have kind of upgraded sort of coils or dampers on it, because it does feel sort of slightly firmer. Having said that, on the motorway yesterday driving back, it's still marvelled at actually how compliant and comfortable the car actually is on motorway surfaces. I got back without any kind of gripes or groans from my back or my backside after a long time in the car. It's only sort of sharper bumps that tend to catch it out, give it a bit of a clonk now and again as you go into some deep ones, but it's a small price to pay for what is the best front wheel drive sort of chassis out there, alongside the DC2, of which I have. So this is a sensational car. Brakes perfect, lovely hard biting Brembo brakes on the car, typical of Brembo brakes. You do have a little bit of low speed squeal, which is a characteristic of them, and you can sort of skim the pads off and get rid of it for 5 minutes, but it soon comes back. They're notorious for doing it, but again, it's the price you pay for what is a brilliant braking system. Looking around inside the car, they're really well made cars, no squeaks, no rattles. It's got this, again, just trying to think of things that to worth mentioning. Obviously, it's a radio. It's not sat nav. It's a radio, but realistically, basically been used by the last owner as a CD player, and he's got an aux port there to play his music through. So I can't get reception on the radio, don't know how it works. I seem to get there, but nothing's coming through. But as he said, he only ever played downloaded music. So again, just trying to pick up on anything that merits a mention. But coming more to the car itself, a slightly longer video than normal, just because I want to talk about it. It's rare to have these things. Obviously, I'm a traditionalist. White with red interior, to me, is everything on the car. It might not be to individuals, I know that, but my Integras, my last one was in that colour. My Integra DC2's got this colour, championship whites and the red Recaros, and I just think it's, A, it's more valuable second hand, but B, I think it's more pleasing on the eye in every single respect. But it's just the car. Again, what struck me driving home yesterday was just how modern the car felt still on the road. It has a compliance to the chassis, it has a sophistication to the car that belies the fact that it's nearly 20 years old. I mean, it really is an extraordinary piece of engineering, which is why they're so valuable. This is why people hanker after them. But the things that make it special are a multitude of things, because it all comes together to me as a package. Very, very few cars in this day and age, particularly modern cars, give you kind of the sensation and buzz when you drive the car. Classic example, I had a 2015 Civic Type R, the turbo one, which was a unbelievable car in every single way. I absolutely loved that car, but having a 4-cylinder turbo engine which didn't really give a lot of noise, pulled it was just unbelievably fast, but just didn't kind of thrill. It's a very hard thing to put your hand on. Whereas this, everything about the car sort of feeds your sensations. And when you first get in the car, you feel the car's kind of moving, that you feel everything, you feel the steering, even though it's not really talking to you at this speed, it's alive enough to let you know this isn't kind of some sanitized modern car where you don't feel anything at all. Realistically, it's all kind of artificial. This couldn't be more different in that respect. And when particularly with the steering, I took mine on the local track at Castlecombe, and I did a couple of track days on the car and sprint races in them. What the steering is brilliant at is at higher speeds, and when the car starts to move around, which I'm talking about sort of track. I'm not encouraging people to drive like that on the road, quite clearly. That's when the steering becomes alive, because you basically feel every motion, movement of the car, the transition from understeer to a bit of oversteer. As you go into the corners, you back off the throttle, you can feel the differential biting and pulling at the car, and it basically comes through the seat of your pants, through the steering wheel, and every motion is just fed back to you. And it is brilliant, because what it isn't is horribly over assisted or too sharp, where it makes the car feel really nervous. You basically load the car up as you go into the corner. You go in sort of trying to find out where the grip is, and you just feel the whole car leaning on its outside wheels. And the steering plays its part, because it doesn't become, let's say, sort of, it's kind of overly nervous in doing it. It's just absolutely sensational, and obviously the chassis is a key part of that. There's hardly any front-wheel drive cars that can drive with the precision, the balance, whether it be a tight hairpin or a fast sweeping, flat-out 6th gear, 100-mile-an-hour plus corner. The information you get back is the same. It doesn't change. It's still crystal clear. It is an amazing chassis that finally the motoring press is acknowledging as one of the all-time greats, and rightly so, because it really is. It's absolutely brilliant, and it's hard for me to differentiate between the DC2 and the DC5 on the track, because they are both simply amazing, absolutely amazing. It's you know, I've got a soft spot for my DC2. Of course I have. You know, it's not as quick as this, it's not as powerful as this, it's not as quick around the track actually. You know, I find its balance absolutely the limit, slightly more natural, but I'm splitting hairs because, you know, I'm comparing two of the absolute greats. There's nothing that comes close to either. And then you get to the engine, you know, and the engine is so docile, up to 3,000 RPM, just tootling along, and then you can feel it just garners power. But this one, obviously, with probably an induction, you put your foot down, and absolutely just the most remarkable engine in production. It is sensational. I mean, it is a pure race engine. When, you know, it's better than most race engines of its era, and it's a production car which will do hundreds of thousands of miles. It's mind-boggling. On top of which, you've got a gearbox. Sorry, that doesn't help the traffic lights here. Which feels as though it's bolted down into a gearbox underneath. It isn't, of course. It goes through to the gearbox underneath the engine bay. But the quality of the gear shift, the mechanical feel of it, the precision, again, even at the higher RPMs, because again, some gearboxes can feel fine changing up at sort of lower revs, but they can become really bulky and horrible at higher revs, which is a horrible thing to have particularly on a track where you are absolutely reliant that the gear change is going to be there for you. When you're entering a corner, you want to make absolutely certain the gears engage exactly where you want them to. You don't want to be kind of coasting into a corner where you can sort of find yourself spinning off. This gear change, just magical, absolutely brilliant. It really is. The gears, the synchromesh is perfect. You know, it is one of the great gearboxes out there. You know, the cars, as I said, you know, I'm massively biased because I love them, but there's a huge number of people who share my opinion of this car. You know, it's got mechanical integrity, it's got engineering on a different planet to anything else of its era and type. You know, there's lots of very good cars at the time which, you know, the car magazines were full of. I think back to kind of the old Fiat Turbos and the Alphas and the VWs of the type, Corrados, and yet none of them have the real world hundreds of thousands of miles quality to them that these things give. And you know, you just look after them, and they'll look after you. They are very, very tough machines indeed. And this particular example drives absolutely beautifully. It really does. And let's say that engine, I could do it all day. Just, oh dear, I love it. So, as I said at the start of the video, the point is really just to show the car, show it working. So the only thing I can find, radio if you want one, I'm sure someone can do something with that. But everything else seems to work exactly as it should. It just drives sensationally well. Any questions about the car, as always, you know, don't hesitate, do give us a call.